Hello and welcome back to the Transfer Flow podcast. It's me, Patrick Van Straten, back with you for another episode, and I'm joined by Ravi Ramaneni. How are you, Ravi?
Hey, Patrick, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I gather that you're enjoying a little bit of Texan heat, the last throes of Texan heat.
Yeah, I think this week is probably the last really hot week for this summer. And that's what the predictions say, but you never know. We may have a surprise in September, but it is definitely the last. I think we've had enough, I would say.
That's
it's
always how I
almost
feel in like June, July in
4
London.
months. Yeah, 4 months of this has been enough. Yeah.
Oh, God. Like a couple of it now has got to the point where pretty much every year in London it gets to like you normally get a high 30s day, so like a 38, like we had a 40 day like a couple of years ago, like in central London, which is like quite disgusting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got to be honest, I quite enjoy having a miserable climate when you tell me that like after it ticks up past like 11 a.m. or something, you can't go for a run.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No chance.
You're going to turn into jerky. Okay. We've got some good transfers for you today. And I think we should kick off with Ilkay Gundogan, who obviously left the Premier League last season as this emotional farewell to Manchester City. And a year later, looks like he's going to come back, do one last dance. Barcelona obviously need to free up some space here. Basically, they can't register Dani Olmo with La Liga because they don't have enough kind of cap space. They don't have enough in their wage allowance that La Liga kind of allocates to them. And so in order to register Dani Olmo and potentially to make a move for another winger, we hear they're interested in Rafael Leao, they need to move somebody on. And Gundogan may not be a valuable player when it comes to transfer fee, but he's an enormous earner, supposedly on about £15 million, 18 million euros a year, which is crazy, crazy money. What do you think of him heading back to Manchester City, Ravi?
It's funny that when he signed for Barcelona, they couldn't register him right away either. It's interesting that now they are moving him to get Dani Olmo in. I've actually seen that system. I've actually used that. It's literally like a screen, like a portal where you have like a number, sort of like a countdown, saying positive or negative how much, and then you could, if you register a player and the number is above it, you can't. It's almost like, in a UX flow where you can't submit. The submit button is grayed out.
Mm-hmm.
That's exactly how it is. So yeah, I think it's a great sort of signing for Man City, just because there is no downside to this 1-year deal. Looks like, based on what we've heard or seen so far, and a player that probably knows everything about Pep's system and played for them so long, has the affinity and the relationships, on-field relationship built with all the squad. I think it's just like a plug. It's as plug and play as a player, a signing can be, I think, for City. And he can spell any of the four kind of attacking kind of midfielders that play ahead of Rodri, or the single pivot, and mostly the interior ones. And De Bruyne is getting up on age as well, so he's going to be fine just playing maybe 20-25 starts in the season, and that would give some leeway. If De Bruyne gets injured, he will be a good. There couldn't be a better type of player that can come in and you don't notice much of a drop off. So I do think it's a really good signing with very low upside, even though obviously the wages are going to be high. But no matter who they bring in to at that level, I think either they have to pay that money in terms of transfer, or if you amortize transfer over X number of years plus the wages per year, you add that up, you're probably looking at similar number to replace or to have somebody that can give you that type of quality.
Yeah.
Instead, what you're getting is you're getting somebody that knows the system inside out and that knows the player inside out. So this is a great deal for for City.
The one thing I wonder about here is the contract length, because obviously when Gundogan left, part of the issue with Man City was that they weren't giving him a long enough contract, and Barcelona supposedly handed him a 3-year one. His contract there expires in 2026. Now, if Man City bring him back on a 1-year deal or even a 1+1, that kind of makes sense to me, I guess. But if they bring it back and they have to now lock him in for another 2 years, then it does feel a little bit like they're just giving up the position that I think they held quite wisely a year ago.
Yeah, it's possible that they are giving up that, but a 1+1 may be sort of a compromise between a full 2-year what they were holding out of and just having just 1 year without any like commitment for beyond this season. So I think that it's one of those where your positions change and you also evolve, and it's a different landscape now as to giving a 3-year deal a year ago. I think now saying, well, this season plus maybe next season, it doesn't sound quite as bad. And if you look at him, he's played quite a lot at Barcelona. And one of the things with his type of game is that he's never depended on speed or pace type, like physical attributes that you see decline a lot. He's always been the more intelligent passing, and he knows when to get into the box. I think that type of skills probably age out a little better than say somebody that depends on pure physical attributes. So that's where I see the risk on a little bit on the lower side. And again, I think we also briefly chatted before getting online about Pep. Could this be his last year? Or so obviously maybe he may sign a new deal, who knows? But the fact that if this is his last year, I think he would want to try to win everything and just go on a high. And a player like this will definitely improve those chances.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if 24-25 is the last year of Pep at City, which it currently is, barring a contract extension, then 25-26 is somebody else's problem. It also, I think, has kind of an interesting bit of information for how we might expect Barcelona to sign up. Like, obviously, at the weekend, they used Rafinha in a kind of 10 role. The signing of Dani Olmo as well. We said, well, we don't like him as a winger. If you're playing him as a 10, I still think, well, what does that mean if Pedri's fit? But it feels like this also suggests that is the way they're going to go, because Gundogan is no longer a guy who's going to play in your double pivot. He hasn't been that for a long time.
Yeah.
Similarly, I don't really want him playing as a 10. I want him as an extra runner in the final third and a ball retention guy rather than the creator.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that one of the big differences, if you look at his data from Barcelona in the last season at City, is the amount of touches and amount of runs he's made into the box. Just because in Barcelona he was playing a little further back and he wasn't playing that same role, but his XG per shot and XG created, those numbers stayed pretty steady, even though Barcelona was not the most smoothly run or smoothest club last season in terms of a lot of turmoil, a lot of noise around Xavi and all that.
Yeah. Well, I think this kind of works for everybody. Gundogan goes back to a club that knows him. He gets a chance to win everything. City get an experienced player who knows the system. And Barcelona get bailed out of a deal that really was, I don't know, was a little bit unwise when they made it, regardless of the fact that they got a good return out of Gundogan last year. So should we...
Yeah, I think, there's hardly... I guess, can we call this a win-win for Barcelona and City in some ways?
If Barcelona at the end of the window can register everyone they want to register, then I guess you have to. But knowing Barcelona, they're going to have to do something insane. Like, I imagine them on their little portal, like just seeing, like, can we change the currency? Can we move decimal points here? Like, what can we do to make this work? Should we move on to a player at kind of the opposite end of his career, Georginio Rutter, who is off to Brighton for about 40 million euros, had a fantastic season in the Championship last season with Leeds. And to a degree, you'd sort of expect that. Like Leeds have a huge talent advantage on the majority of that league, but he really did excel. He was 11th in the league for non-penalty expected goals and expected assists per 90. He actually slightly underperformed, I suppose, with 22 goal involvements from around 25 expected. And the thing that stands out to me, Ravi, is that his expected goals and expected assists are roughly even. It feels like it doesn't really necessarily look this way when he's playing, but his output is split almost exactly between creating and getting chances of his own.
Yeah, I think as a 21-year-old, I watched quite a bit of Championship last season. Leeds was Leeds. It's still a little bit of a mystery that they didn't get promoted. They were they were very impressive, and he was phenomenal. He as a 21-year-old, the season he's had, and the amount he played as a winger or as a forward, as somebody that is very reliant on his pace and accelerations, and that type of durability over 3,500 or almost 4,000 minutes. That's very impressive for a 21 turning 22-year-old winger. So I really like this player. Very dynamic. He's a great dribbler, great ball carrier, and also the other things that I think when he moves to the Premier League, the coaches and the talent evaluators would love about him is that he does do a good job of tracking back runners when the ball turns over, presses really well from the front, both from wide positions as well as a 9. So he's, for me, for a 22-year-old wide player, he's very as complete as they get. He's in terms of passing, he's good at the final ball. Like as you mentioned about expected assists, being one of he's basically 90th percentile or above in the league in expected goals and expected assists. That tells like he's in the top 10 percentile in all of Championship last season. He can do the crossing, the find runners inside the box or cutbacks, get to the end line and cut back the ball pretty well. Very good at that. At the same time, he's also played a little bit as a 9. Not a little bit. He's played a good amount as a 9. Even though personally at this stage, I like him coming from the wide positions. Probably left is his favorite. Then even coming from the right, he's fine. But I like him. Like I really like him.
Yeah, me too. But my only question, well, I know that there's something we want to get onto with Brighton's strategy this summer. But the interesting thing here is as much as I like him, my best Brighton attack has Mitoma playing off the left.
Yeah.
And they've got quite a lot of it's nice to have another guy who can play centre forward. They've obviously sold Denis Undav, who was on loan last season. Evan Ferguson looks like a great talent, but is not reliable at this stage of his career, both because of age and injury. So having somebody who can play left wing and up front is great. But I suppose I don't really know like what the plan is when everybody's fit. Now, obviously, I know you have to rotate, but you wonder if they're softening the ground maybe for a sale. Mitoma is 27. It'd be a good time to sell him. Ferguson, you probably want another big season before you come to sell him because his value would have dropped over last year. But he's a guy who we've seen multiple big clubs linked to. So this one, especially at the cost, feels like maybe Brighton are thinking one of those guys is going in 2025.
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good analysis of what this looks like. So this past weekend, the first match of the season, the new coach, Fabian Hürzeler, he started with Toma on the left, Yankuba Minte, another player that we all love at Transfer Flow. Just amazing player. And then, Danny Welbeck and João Pedro, right? Hürzeler, for most of his time at St. Pauli, he played more of a 3-4-3 type with two wide attackers. So it makes sense that he has Minte and he's looking at this as they signed Minte, they signed now Rutter, and they have Mitoma. So that's 3 starter level players for maybe two positions. So maybe there is some logic there that, okay, I'm going to rotate this, I'm going to play this. And Minte is also pretty young. Rutter is also pretty young. So maybe there is some of that idea there of having 2 for 3 type situation. But you always think a team like Brighton, when they spend 40 million, you would think that this guy is going to just walk into the starting lineup. Right. So that's also kind of a natural, logical assumption to make. I looked up Brighton's transfers in the past since they came to Premier League. I think 8 seasons, up to 8 seasons, and this season they're at I know this net transfer spend thing is not real because the transfers, they, like, basically in terms of accounting, when you buy a player, you amortize it over X number of years. So if you buy a player for 40 million, it's not 40 million hitting your bank today, leaving your bank account today, but it's like maybe 5 or 8 or whatever. And when you sell a player, though, you book that amount right away. So there is a difference there. But still, I think if you want to use that number across the years consistently, this year they're at minus 135 so far, which is the highest kind of. I mean, there's still 10 days of window left. So my guess is there are some outbounds that are going to happen. This is the highest kind of negative balance they've had in these 8 years. The first 2 seasons in the Premier League, they had minus 70, minus 75. And then I think in 1920, they had minus 60, or minus 62. And then the last 2 seasons, plus 80, plus 83. And generally, they've been in that more in that plus range. So this seems like a departure from what they've done in the recent past. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I guess there might be a part of it where they realize that they've got this kind of space in PSR now, and they see that there are these particular opportunities. So like Minte was such a great opportunity that maybe they felt obliged to go for it. Honestly, I don't really. I find it kind of strange because last summer when they went and got Joao Pedro, we said that feels quite un-Brighton-y. They've gone and spent a load of money on this guy who we like, but he's not like a superstar slam dunk. You know, he's a really, really good, promising player out of the Championship. They went and got Minte this summer, and then they immediately added Brian Gruder in the kind of same role. So honestly, no, I don't really know what it is. I just wonder if they're like, right, we've got the space this summer, and we will probably be able to make a big sale next year, whether it's Baleba, whether it's Mitoma, whether it's Ferguson, whether it's Minte. Well, in the meantime, let's just like add some of these guys and go for it now.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Minte, I think, was the first weekend before he got concussed. He was like a highlight reel for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And I when I saw the Rutter signing go through, well, one day I want to see them play Rutter on one side and Minte on the other side, and run at some some hapless fullbacks. See how that looks like. But yeah, it is something. Looks like obviously by the end of the window they could be like minus 50, or unlikely, but they could come down pretty. Like they could kind of make up that difference. But it's definitely been a little bit of a departure, as you said, even as going back last year. But I think last year the numbers looked better because of the huge sale of Caicedo to Chelsea.
Also, as well, Rutter, a really good defending attacker, because that time at Leeds, the most aggressive team in terms of making defensive actions in the final third in the Championship last season, and Rutter a big part of that. One last thing on Brighton. Do you feel like they're lacking a profile in there? Because it does feel like they've got loads and loads of these attackers who can do a bit of everything, and lots of shot-getting guys. And as we've said, Rutter can be creative. But I think you pointed out off air, his creativity is more, he's found in space and he gets a cutback rather than he picks a pass through a sitting defense. With Pascal Gross gone, does it feel like maybe they need a player who's more of a kind of unlocking player, or is that just like old-fashioned, I grew up with 4-2-3-1 thinking?
I think that you can. I mean, I guess I would put myself in the same bucket of growing up with that 4-2-3-1 mentality. I do think that you can never have enough of that deeper playmaking ability in your squad, because as it gets, I think it adds to these attackers. You need, if you can have more than one player, or at least one player that can reliably find the runners into space that you're creating this front line with, I think it's really, really useful. And as you said, I think that's a profile maybe they will try to address in the rest of the window.
Okay, interesting. Well, that's something to keep an eye out for, and to see whether rumors of a book balancing big sale start to come down the pipeline. Okay, should we head over to Fulham? Because Fulham are obviously have remembered that they've got the Palhinha money in their back pocket and have started spending it, perhaps after playing a not hugely impressive Manchester United and yet getting beaten fairly comfortably. Perhaps they thought, oh, we might need to do something here. They've brought in Sander Berge from Fulham, 25 million, not from Fulham, from Sheffield United even, 25 million, pretty hefty. Interestingly, he was linked with United when the rumour was that United were going to sell Scott McTominay to Fulham. Now, I'm not the world's biggest fan of Berge, but I do think that I would rather go for him than go for McTominay so United can sign him. I don't know how you feel about that, Ravi.
He is. I mean, it depends on what Fulham wants from him. I think he is somebody that gets a ton of touches on the ball. He's a ball playing center mid, if you want to put like a label on him. He's good at keeping possession, moving the ball. He's also very good at keeping the ball under pressure and then passing. But a lot of his passing is not very aggressive line breaking type passes. A lot of the passing is to keep the game moving. Is a connector type player. Like out of possession, it doesn't give you a lot of positive sensation or positive vibes. Like he's not a great tackler. I think he's more of a guy that passes the ball, that helps the build up, and will be able to receive the ball with his back, with pressure on his back, facing his own goal, turn and find another midfielder close to him. And then from there, he will positionally watch the game to see he'll try to make his movement intelligent, where he can intercept the balls when there is a loose ball. He's more of that type of center mid. He's not going to go hunt and win balls back. He's more of being intelligent, intercept the balls, intercept loose passes, and that type of a center mid.
And to some degree, that might be desirable for Marco Silva, because supposedly, as much as it felt. I mean, I wasn't the biggest Palhinha fan, but I do think that Fulham were not very good last season. And when you're not very good, having a guy who just wins the ball a lot is quite helpful. But supposedly Marco Silva was very frustrated with Palhinha, that he was kind of like a terrier, where he'd see the ball and he'd go herring off after it. And Silva would say, when they bypass you, there's this enormous space that they can pass through. I would rather have a guy who stood in the space and knew what he was meant to do, even if you're quite successful when you go and hunt the ball down.
No, I think I think then he would definitely fit that profile better. What Marco Silva is looking for. He's not that aggressive terrier that is going to go try to hunt the ball. But most of his defensive interventions seem to come through interceptions of the ball. I think, Fulham, their goal has to be just staying up, right? Or maybe finishing mid-table is probably their ceiling. If you have to say how far they can go. I think with that in mind, I think this is right in that ballpark of a good signing.
Yeah, it feels like that. I mean, if they stay up and get a bit younger, that's great. That's a great season for them. And like, he's not a young player, but he's significantly younger than a lot of the guys they've got there. Like Tim Ream leaving probably brings the average age down. And then obviously, you know, Smith Rowe, if Muniz plays more, even guys like Ryan Sessegnon, who I don't think much of, but there are a handful of 24-year-olds who come in. Now Berge 26. Yeah, I agree. He's not a defensive midfielder by any means. I actually wonder if when United were thinking of him, they were thinking of him as a rotation for Kobbie Mainoo, because the one area where you kind of think there's upside with Berge is that before last season, he was a pretty good ball carrier. Like, he was reasonably dribbly. And he's like a good kind of retention guy. He's not a final third player. He's also not a huge defensive player. So if they'd got him and then got in an Ugarte type, you could sort of see how that might all work together. With Fulham, it still feels like, I don't know, I still would probably want a guy in there who just wins the ball an awful lot, but it's fine.
Yeah. As a team that's, you know, looking from the bottom half to the top as, you know, where they're going to finish, I would rather want a ball winner than someone more like this. Or at least I need, if I have one of my midfielders have to be that ball winning, more skewed towards ball winning. Another thing with him is that he was at Burnley the year before in the Championship, in that the great Burnley season where they dominated possession. So you could see him, a lot of his possession was really in the attacking half, but that was because every team was defending Burnley so deep. And he was basically doing the same passes, like sideways passes, you know, much higher up the field, which was pretty kind of interesting to, if you go back and watch a few clips from the 22-23 season, you will see that it's almost like, you know, Burnley is like this, you know, the old Barcelona where they've pinned everybody back in the opponent back third, and they were just passing, you know, around them. But so that won't happen with Fulham. Like, you know, Fulham probably will not dominate possession in most games. And maybe that's, if you think about Marco Silva, I think maybe that's where he thinks he looks at the game the way is, well, if I can keep the ball for maybe 5 minutes more or 10% more during the games, that's 10% less defending I have to do. So it's achieving the same goal by avoiding doing things you are not good at.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. And I think you don't want to read too much into one game, but that United game I do think is not an aberration, you know, relative to Fulham's last season. They often did lack passing quality at the base of midfield, and they often did lack a way out when teams had pinned them back. And they're buying in here a guy who's much more reliable on the ball than the guy there before, and who's an enormous physical presence. And perhaps if that can get them, you know, 20 yards further up the pitch when they get the ball back, then they're not going to feel these constant waves coming back at them, which is certainly how it felt in that first match.
Yeah. And, you know, one little note, I still can't believe Paulinho was bought by Bayern.
I know. It's crazy.
It's great.
But Bayern are managed by Vincent Kompany. I mean, this season, all bets are off. There's actually something I'd quickly like to get your opinion on. Another thing with Fulham before we move on. They've also added some more passing quality, I would say, by bringing in Joachim Andersen from Crystal Palace, about 30 million, which feels like quite a lot for a 28-year-old. And Palace are just going to try and turn that around and bring in Maxence Lacroix from Wolfsburg, who I think is like a pretty decent player. I wouldn't want to bring him in and him be a starter immediately, but like, he knows the manager. He's paid under the manager. Sure. What do you think about Anderson going to Fulham? Because this feels of a piece with the Berge signing. Like, we need the ability to pass from deep areas on the pitch.
Yeah, but Anderson is an interesting. You know, he's center back. I would put him. He plays the right side of the right side center back, and for me, he has a really good long ball. Like, he can do that. Not only when they do put a lot of pressure on him and he just swoofs it long. I'm not talking about that. Even when he's not under pressure, he has a really good long pass to bypass some of the pressure and get get to either the wingers or maybe even a direct ball into the number 9. So from that perspective, like he does bring a different element to the passing that I think they lack. Or they lost. I think Tim Ream was a good passer. That's and they lost quite a bit with him. And I know they signed this defender Jorge Cuenca from Villarreal, who's also a good passer. I know this because that's the team I watch a lot more than any other team. But he's young, and I think he'll take some time to adapt to the Premier League. But he's another good passer. So I think you can see their strategy in their overall strategy in their transfer strategy this season. Fulham, I think they went into try to get more technical players. I wouldn't call Joachim Anderson a very technical passer by any means, but I do think he has a few types of passes, especially the long ball, which is very handy and very good. Strong in the air. He is 1v1. He's an okay defender, but he's also like he doesn't let a lot of dribblers get by him, because one thing is that if they get by him, he doesn't have the speed to keep up with them. He's definitely a little bit like he doesn't have the acceleration to keep up with them. So like he is, but he does bring something that they seem to have added with Berge as well is just the familiarity of playing in the Premier League. So I think that has to count for something. And I would say he is above average at some of those longer diagonal balls and passing. Probably one of the better center backs that can do it. But overall, I would rate him as slightly above average defender in the Premier League, or average, right around there. But that is nothing to be ashamed about, because it's Premier League, one of the probably the best league in the world, to be an average defender starter, and he's very available. His availability is very high.
Yeah, that's true.
All of that, I think, adds up to very steady signing, I would say. Nothing flashy about it. There is not like a tremendous amount of upside. 28 for a center back is not a bad age. He's not like he's past his peak. He's not that, like, again, he's not somebody that terribly reliant on his speed and physical attribute or pace attributes. He does, he's good in the air, like he's 192. So I think overall I think I'm okay with this signing. I don't really think it's a bad signing. I think it's I wouldn't say it's a great signing, but I think it's somewhere in between.
Yeah, it's not going to be a disaster, I think. And actually as well, he because he is the right-sided centre-back, they have Kenny Tete playing at right-back, and those guys play together at Lyon too.
Oh,
so
there we go.
Potentially there's some idea there that, it might be an easier landing for him in Fulham. Should we move on from Sander Berge to another, I've got to say, kind of underwhelming midfielder?
Let's go.
Kim's newsletter, as a Spurs fan, I think very happy and surprised to get 20 plus 5 million in add-ons for Oliver Skipp, who's heading off to Leicester. Under 1090s in the Premier League last season. He's 23. If somebody asked me what he's good at, I don't know what I'd say.
Well, I've done about an hour of research on him. Like just looking at stuff, and then I did a little bit of it yesterday, and then some more of it today. I still don't know. He plays left back, and then he plays center mid, and as a left back, I think he's mostly. What I gather from all of that is that I think they want him help the build out, because I think one of his good qualities is passing. One of his, or probably his better qualities. Good passer, under pressure, also good passer. So not like elite under pressure, but very good under pressure. So I think the way they probably look at the left back thing, I think I see them as, well, he plays left back, but he's not your overlapping fullback type. He's probably one to rotate inside and then help the build out as an auxiliary third center back. But he's right-footed. So just to just look at his profile. He doesn't, it's very hard to find what he really excels at. I think he's a good connector of the ball. If you're going to play him in the midfield, if you have two other midfielders that have some strong qualities, maybe one being a ball winner, another being more of a progressive passer or line breaking passer type profiles, I think he can fit in between to connect and just make this whole thing move. It's more of pass the ball, move, pass, move, like a lot of lot of like short passes. When he plays as a left back, he does get forward on the left wing channel, but mostly while he's combining with someone. It's not he's going to make an off-ball run to receive a ball into space. It's more of I'm going to pass a ball to someone and then take the space in front of me, and then I get the return ball and then I pass back type player from watching him. I think when I looked at his numbers, they didn't really tell me a very clear story of what he is, just like what you just said. Like, I don't know what he's really good at. And I think he could play, it's almost like you see a need for someone to maybe the best role I can see for him is a midfield connector. Someone that can connect. Sometimes helps in the build up as well if he drops deep, and he can then connect that to so if you say the build up phase and then there is the middle phase, he can do that, connecting the ball in the middle phase to someone that can then make a ball that breaks a line and get it into the final third, like that type of player.
It looks like he can take tactical instruction, I think, is probably one of the kind of things you could say. Like, he's a pretty willing presser as well. I don't think he's going to get over ambitious and do stupid stuff. So in that sense, I think he's a relatively rational player. But this is the thing, so often we talk about transfers and it maybe feels like we're a bit harsh on the players, but this is a perfect example where the player is not really the issue so much as Leicester deciding that the best use of £25 million was to spend it on Oliver Skipp is the issue.
Yeah. And he had a great breakout season at Norwich a few years ago.
Yeah.
And it's like, obviously after that, and if you look at him, last season he played, I think, 700 minutes, which is roughly 8 or 990s, rough math in the Premier League. The year before he played about 16. Like, that's a negative sign for me, or at least a sort of an orange flag. Well, this is this 22-year-old turning 23, played a lot more, and then now he's playing less. Sure, there's a new coach and he's going in a different direction, and that probably tells that maybe he is. And I think that's another reason why this 20 plus 5 sounds a little head scratchy. That clearly he's not a player that Spurs valued that much, or that they depended as much on him.
Yeah, Leicester are concerning me quite seriously, I've got to say. Okay, well, I think that brings us to the end of our major transfer business. But there was one thing that caught your eye. I know after our discussion yesterday about Chelsea, Enzo Maresca said something to the media, right?
Yeah, I saw this was tweeted by the great Fabrizio Romano, a quote from Maresca saying, "I think he's reacting to all the noise in the media saying it's impossible, like it is 42 players." He basically said that, I am only working with 21 players. In my training, I have 21 players. I think he meant probably 21 outfield players. That's usually how coaches count. So which I think was what we were talking about yesterday, is that trainings, to run a good training, the number of players is a very big parameter. Like, you want to run effective training. That number can't be too many or too little. I think 21, 22 outfield players roughly is where that good number is. So you can divide them the way you want, and into like either 11v11 drills or 8v8s or 6v6s. You have enough numbers to do that. So So that, and I think that goes back to the whole thing about what we were talking yesterday about just this number. And I'm glad that he came out and said it, because, and I'm also I'm glad that he's actually doing that. I think that's the right way to do it. Like, you have to make those decisions before getting 40 players into the locker room. Yeah, I think like now, obviously, if they are if 15 or 16 of them are training apart, that may be that they are training at a different time or on a different pitch. If he has to take the training, they have to train at a different time, right? Like, if the main staff has to take the training, they're probably training in the afternoon or training. So the first group trains 10 to 11:30. The second group comes in at 1 p.m. Like, whatever it is, like, they're doing something. It's crazy.
I mean, I feel like I've said everything that we could say about Chelsea. I just don't really know what to make of it anymore. Who does?
Yeah. We'll see how all this ends.
Yeah, maybe we all look like idiots and they look incredibly smart.
Exactly.
Like, that would be interesting, if not particularly enjoyable.
That would be a learning experience, because I think we'll learn something new. That, okay, well, you can do it this way also.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, right, we're going to bring it to an end there. Thank you very much for listening or watching. If you're watching us on YouTube, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel. Give us a like if you've enjoyed it. And you can let us know in the comments if there's anything that you'd like us to discuss. Please leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. Follow our social media pages. And obviously subscribe to the newsletter, which I still think is the best place this summer to get an intelligent roundup of the transfer news. And I think we'll catch you next time. Thank you very much, Ravi, for coming on and talking to me. It's always really interesting to hear your takes.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Patrick, for listening to me. Sometimes I ramble.
I enjoy it. I don't think it's rambling. But I'm going to avoid rambling. Let's say goodbye. Bye.
Bye.